yesterday we were talking about the Hashgacha Pratis, if you remember, how all the interesting little coincidences in life, how God runs the world, that was the first part of the Mitzvot. There was a guy driving in the territories in Israel. These Arabs were standing up on a hill and they started throwing stones at his car. So in Israel, you have to be very careful before you get out of your car and shoot anybody, because they can prosecute you for it. So the guy got out of his car and he shot in the air, and one of the Arabs got hit in the forehead with a bullet and he died. So there's a police investigation. I remember reading this one morning. The guy was arrested. In Israel, usually when they arrest you for something like that, you're in big trouble. And he had shot in the air and he hit the guy right. So then they did a police investigation. About a week later, I was eating breakfast and I was reading the Yated, the Frum paper. And as I was drinking my coffee, I started chuckling because I saw a little item. A week later, they released the guy. I was very wondering why you release the guy. Turned out it wasn't his bullet that had hit him. Upon police investigation, it turned out that when one of the Arabs threw the stone, it hit the wheel of the speeding car and shot out from the wheel and hit the guy himself right in the head and killed him. So it was the best shot on a Palestinian since David killed Goliath, the Plishti. Right, he hit him right in the forehead with a stone. So something in life, you see, you couldn't have done it if you wanted to. You could have done it, but a million times you wouldn't be able to do that. Get the stone to shoot back at you, hit the tire, get a boom, and it right in the forehead, killed the guy who threw it. So you see, that's what we were talking about yesterday. That's the nega, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is putting the touch on you. HaKadosh Baruch Hu, he's got you in his sights and he's putting the touch on you. Okay, now the next mitzvah is Kuf Ayin Aleph, is 171, and this is a multi-lessoned mitzvah. The mitzvah is the Mitzorah, who's the guy who's got the leprosy. He has to the tzaras. He has to rend his garments, and he has to let his hair grow, just like a mourner. And in Torah, a mourner must rend his garments. There are all sorts of halachas where he makes a tear and who he makes a tear for, different for father and mother than it is for the other relatives. And he has to let his hair grow. In other words, you neglect your physical appearance. And the Mitzorah has to do the same thing. He has to rend his garments, he has to let his hair grow, and that's a sign to everybody that he is tameh. That's a sign that he is impure and he's off limits. Now, one of the things that he does is the Gemara, the Torah says that when somebody comes near him, he has to call out tameh, tameh. If anybody comes near him, because halacha is an amma is about, let's say, anywhere between 1.5 feet and 2 feet. So no one's allowed within 4 amos of somebody who has got tzaras. He's not allowed to live at home, not allowed to live with his wife. He's off limits. And so the Torah says that anybody who comes near him, he has to call out tameh, tameh, to warn people that he is tameh and that they should not come near him. So the commentaries say that one of the ideas over here is to show us that when you do an avera distances you from anything good. Now people are, don't come near me, I am a sinner. That's really what you're saying. I have tzaras, I am a sinner, don't come near. And the lesson is that sometimes people in life think that there's a tendency to think that if you do the averas, you'll take a shortcut. There are no shortcuts. You will never gain from doing an avera. You'll never gain from doing an avera. If you do something inappropriate, it will distance you from anything good. You may get temporary satisfaction, but I heard an incredible story. This is unbelievable. It's unbelievable. It's a Jewish kid. I just thought of this. I just remember this story. This amazing story. There's a Jewish kid who went to a Jewish day school. And his goal in life was to become a really high-powered lawyer. So he goes to day school, and he goes to Jewish day school, and then he went to a private Catholic high school, which where you get the best education. And the one thing, he would never take off his yarmulke. He refused to compromise. He would not take off his Yiddishkeit, his yarmulke, but he had to get this private school. I don't know if it was a Catholic school, a very fancy private school. He graduates this private school, and he gets it to one of the top colleges in the country. And the second day he's walking around the university, or the second month he's in the university, he gets called to the Dean of Students. Dean of Students calls him and he says, listen, Goldstein, I've had a report that you're an excellent student from all the teachers already. You have tremendous potential. There's only one problem. You're wearing a hat on your head, and we don't allow that in the school. So Goldstein says, sir, no matter what, I will not take off this yarmulke. This is my yarmulke. It symbolizes my religion. The principal says, this is what I thought you would say. And I also heard from your teachers that you are a person of principle, and therefore we are going to make an exception in your case. Don't disappoint me. Don't let me down. Okay, goes through his 4 years of law school, and towards graduation, he gets called in again to the what do you call it, the dean. The dean says, Goldstein, look, we have a request from the famous law firm of Lee, Doyle, Murphy, and Hodge, the top law firm in the country. There are 3 candidates across the country for a very prestigious position in this law firm, and you have been named from our school. You'll be competing against 2 candidates from other schools, and frankly, I think you got the best chance. Don't know one thing, Goldstein. I don't think they're going to be as sympathetic to the cause of the yarmulke as I've been. He goes, says, sir, I have principles, and I will not compromise them. Okay. The big day comes. Goldstein goes down to the office. He walks in, lush, plush carpeting, oak chair, this is just the waiting room. And he's sitting there, he's thinking, listen, I don't want to blow this chance, on the one hand, I don't want to, maybe I'll just take off my yarmulke when I'm in the office. No, how could I do that? And he's going back and forth. And while he has not reached a decision yet, and the secretary also rings by and says, Goldstein, you can go in now. So he takes in a moment of sudden impulse, he just takes his yarmulke, he puts it into his pocket, and he walks into the office. And he sees Mr. Lee, Doyle, Murphy, and Hodge are sitting there, and he realizes immediately that he's made a mistake because every single one of them was wearing a yarmulke on their head. And Lee looks at him, and he says, Goldstein. Before he says that, he says, Goldstein, where's your yarmulke? He says, oh, I just took it. I took it off my head. I put it. He says, Goldstein, let me tell you something. My name is not Lee. My name is Leibowitz, and I shorten it to Lee. And Hodge is Hodjakovitz or something, something like that. And we know more about you than you know yourself. And we're looking for somebody to fill this position. And Goldstein, do you really think that we were going to give you this position because you're such a top-notch lawyer? There are plenty of top-notch lawyers, but we had heard that you will never compromise your principles. And now we see you do. And therefore, you will not get the position, and I would advise you to stick with your principles. So Goldstein wrote this article 40 years later. He ended up becoming a small-time lawyer in a small-time town, and he said he learned a very important lesson: don't compromise your principles. So he never took off his yarmulke after that. So the lesson in life is you do not gain anything by compromising your principles. You compromise your principles, you may gain, there may be a temporary gain. And even if you make a lot of money on an embezzlement, so eventually that'll be your downfall. Eventually you go to jail, somebody will be unhappy with you, and so on and so forth. Sin distances you from anything good, even if at the moment there's going to be some sort of temporary pleasure. That's the first lesson. That's the first lesson by Tzaras. The second lesson is that this is how God works, mida keneged mida. Mida keneged mida means that what goes around comes around. What you do, how you get, what you do is what you get in return. So I think they call it in the secular quid pro quo, isn't that what it's called? Where you get what you deserve, that sort of thing. So, what's it called?
Karma.
Karma. Is that what karma is? Okay, yeah, right. In Torah, we believe, I don't know what karma means, we believe it's called mida keneged mida. Now, when a person speaks Lashon Hara, what do you do? What are the effects of speaking? If you start disparaging people, what is one of the things that happens as a result of you disparaging people? What's that?
You blemish their reputation.
You blemish their reputation, number one. True.
You start something that is out of your hands. Because if I say something to you, you could say it to someone else, or you could change it.
Excellent. I'll say it to somebody else, then eventually I'll go and tell somebody what happened, and 2 people will have a fight as a result of your Lashon Hara. I can't believe you said that about me. That's called Rechilus, by the way. Rechilus is even worse than Lashon Hara. Lashon Hara is if I walk over to you and I say, Ruvain is a fool. That's Lashon Hara. But if you then go to Ruvain and you say to Ruvain, hey, Ruvain, you know what Kaplan said about me? Kaplan said you're a fool. Then Ruvain comes back to me and said, hey, Kaplan, I heard that you told Aaron that you're a fool, that I'm a fool. And what you do is you create the cycle of hatred and you start causing people to fight with each other. That's what your Lashon Hara does. The Torah says, look, a guy who got Tzaras, why did he get Tzaras? Because he said bad things about people and caused them to fight with each other. Oh, you caused people to fight with each other. You created a separation between people. Therefore, you have to be separated from people as well. You have to go out there, and you will stay out there until the tzaraz goes away, which is, in life, anything indefinite takes much longer than the objective amount of time. If you've ever gone somewhere, the trip there is always longer than the way home if you've never been there before, right? Because you don't know exactly how long it's going to be. And once you're there, you know exactly how long the trip is. It's a shorter trip. The Torah says, you created a separation among people. You are an evil person who caused other people to fight. And since you caused other people to fight, therefore you yourself are separated from other people. That's what the Forship say. The other thing is that you announce tameh, tameh when people come near, in order to get people to daven for you. When a person has, we learn a lesson over here, if a person has ever a situation in life where he has some sort of ordeal that he's going through, some sort of challenge, anything that he's going through, let's say he's suffering financially, or maybe there's a health problem, or he's having trouble with his children, whatever it is that a person is going through, he should let other people know about it, and then they could daven for him. In Judaism, sometimes something happens, and you hear about something, and you think to yourself, "Oi, there's really nothing. I wish there was something I could do about it." There is something you could do about it. You could daven. Davening. We don't believe davening is a fallback position. We believe davening is a lichatchila, not a b'diavad. It's like the doctor says, "There's nothing left to do but pray." Oh, I see. You mean after the experts? No. I guess I'll just have to pray. It doesn't work that way. It works that davening is a lichatchila. Davening isn't a b'diavad. There's a famous story about a woman comes to a rabbi. She doesn't have a lot of money. So she comes to the Chassidish Rebbe. And she says, "Rebbe, can you give me a bracha that I should have parnasa?" So the Rebbe says to her, "I'll give you a bracha, but it's going to cost you 10 rubles. It's 10 rubles? I mean, that's a ridiculous price. He says, "Listen, you want a bracha, and a bracha means something to you. It's 10 rubles. She says, "Can't you give me 10 rubles? It's ridiculous. It's an exorbitant price." He says, "No, that's my price, 10 rubles for a bracha." She says, "Well, then forget you. I'll daven to Hashem. Forget your bracha." He says, "Okay, now you can have the bracha." Okay. Now you realize, where is the bracha really coming from? The bracha is coming from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That's our problem. Our problem is we think it's a fallback position. We think, oh, well, I got nothing else. All right, I may as well daven. It doesn't work that way. First you daven. You daven for everything. So if a person is suffering in some way, you get other people to daven for you as well. You get a bracha, whatever the bracha is, a form of tefillah as well. Get somebody else to daven for you, then you daven, and where you go. So a guy who's a mitzorah also needs it. What should people daven for him? What should you daven for the mitzorah? Let's say, okay, a guy comes to you and says, he's got tsaras. Please daven for me. What would you daven for?
Please stop speaking Lashon.
Yes. You should daven that he should do successful tshuva, that he should identify the source of his trouble, do successful tshuva, and then you will have had then he's done the what do you call it? Then you've accomplished what you want to accomplish. Okay. By the way, they also learned from here. There's a custom that where there were unmarked graves, or graves were poorly marked. They used to take lime. Is there the stuff you put on a wall? Isn't that called lime? They would take it's a white thing, almost like paint, and they would paint around the graves in order that people, when graves weren't well marked, they would paint around the graves in order that people should not walk past. Kohanim shouldn't walk past and become tameh. And that's also learned in the Gemara from this tameh yikra, that you call out tameh. That teaches us that anytime there is a source of impurity, we should do whatever we can to mark it off well. In the cemetery in Tzfas, have you ever been to the Ariz cemetery in Tzfas? It used to be you've been there, Gil? It used to be very, very poorly marked. So they finally, the city municipality took it over and they upgraded it and so on and so forth. My brother is a Kohen. He's my brother. And I am a Kohen. And he was with his class. They once went on a trip up to Tzfas. So the Kohanim sat outside of the cemetery while everybody else went in. It didn't happen to him. It happened to some guys that were there. The guys went in, and the Kohanim said they turned out. They said they sat down on a bench, but it turned out it wasn't a bench. It was a tombstone. It was a tombstone that was very poorly marked. So you have to be very, very careful if you ever go into a cemetery. If ever there's a burial site and there's an unmarked grave, you have to mark it off well, because the Kohanim shouldn't go by and shouldn't become tameh. I had a guy here at Or Sameach who told me once he went camping by himself in the backwoods of Virginia somewhere. He's out in the woods of Virginia, and he's looking for a place to sleep for the night, and he sees a little There's like a little crevice in the ground. What's it called?
Dip.
A dip. There's a little dip in the ground. So he gets in this dip, and he goes, he sleeps there. He puts a sleeping bag. It's in like a natural dip in the ground. He goes to sleep. He wakes up in the morning, and he sees that he's covered with cobwebs. He's got cobwebs all over him. There must have been cobwebs. He couldn't see it at night in the dark. And he gets up, and he looks behind him, and he sees there's a cross right behind him. He had been sleeping in a grave. He had gone to sleep in a grave. So, which is generally uncomfortable for both physically and mentally. It is very uncomfortable, yeah. So there's a story about a guy comes walking across, the guy comes out of a bar, and he's drunk as a skunk, and he's on his way home, and he's staggering across a cemetery. So as he gets to the cemetery, he goes walking through, and there's an open grave, and he falls into the open grave. And there's nothing, it's like a freshly dug open grave. And he's just sitting in the grave. He's trying to jump out, and he can't because he's loaded. And he can't, and he decides, all right, I may as well enjoy myself. He just lies down on his back. I'll go to sleep for the night. Not the worst thing. Looks up at the stars, nice and quiet in the cemetery. All right, about 20 minutes later, and he's jumping up trying to get out, and he can't get out. He resigns himself to his fate. About 20 minutes later, another drunk comes staggering off through the cemetery. And as he staggers through the cemetery, he falls into this open grave. Now just imagine you're in a quiet cemetery at midnight, and all of a sudden you have sudden company. Right? So the first drunk gives a scream, jumps out of the grave, and he goes running home. So it's only a story. So somebody once said, it's a motivational, I read this in a book, a motivational book. Why couldn't he get out before that? Why couldn't he get out before that? Then wasn't properly motivated. Once a guy drops into the grave, all of a sudden you can jump out at a higher, much higher than you thought you could jump. All you need is proper motivation. I always felt Olympic runners, they have pace cars for Olympic runners. They have a car that paces them. I always felt that instead of a pace car, they should have a cheetah on the track. They let these guys get chased by a cheetah. Because that'll knock a few seconds off the world record. You better get past before the cheetah catches you. That'll do it for you. So that's the idea. The idea is to mark off the grave so that people don't become tummy. That's what the Gemara says. When I was about 19, my dad took me out to learn how to drive a stick shift. We had a Pinto. Pinto is this real little car you could park. It's a great car. You could park it in an envelope. This beautiful real car about the size of this table. It was a Ford Pinto. It was a stick shift. It also had a problem because Pintos had a habit of getting hit in the back and blowing up. But they're great cars though. So we're in a parking lot, and I could not get the coordination. I just could not release the pedal and push the thing, and the car kept dying. So we went there for about 20 minutes. After 20 minutes, I said, "Dad, forget it. I'll drive the automatic." So my dad says to me, "Look, millions of people in the world drive." I was 19. He said, "Millions of people in the world drive stick shifts. So you can learn how to do it. Keep trying." So I tried for another 10 minutes. I still couldn't do it. I was getting very flustered. And I said, "Dad, forget it. I'll just drive the automatic." So my dad says, "Look, you're coordinated. You can learn how to do it." I said, "I can't do it. Just forget it." And I was just sitting. I was really upset with myself. I'm just sitting there stewing. And my dad, a very wise man, he should live and be well. He sits there for about 2 minutes, and he lets me stew. And at a certain point, he says to me, "Mom knows how to drive it." Within 2 minutes, I was the best stick shift driver in the city. Wheelies, backwards, forwards, everything. There was no way my mother was going to know how to drive a car that I could not drive. It was just not going to happen. So, yeah, in life, the trick is motivation. All you need is a little motivation. Anyway, that's what the Torah says. All right. The next one is also one of the mitzvahs that has to do with tzaras, and this is the way we spoke yesterday about tzaras that could attack your clothing. So a person has clothing, and the clothing shows a discoloration. And then you got to go to the Kohen, the Kohen has to check it, and there are all the laws of the clothing. Now, the idea, and there's a third level, which we'll see is where tzaras, you can see tzaras on the walls of your house. So the commentaries say that the reason there are 3 levels of tzaras is there's tzaras of the body, there's tzaras of the clothing, and then there's a tzaras of the walls of your house. So what the commentaries say is that when HaKadosh Baruch Hu punishes, he doesn't hit you with his best shot right away. In other words, you get a little bit of a warning. First, there's a warning on the walls of your house. So you got to take out some of the bricks and give it to the Kohen, and so on and so forth. Kohen checks it. If you haven't done tshuva, you may get tzaras on your clothing. And if you still haven't done tshuva, then you can get tzaras on your body, which is considered the worst. Okay, because then you are tummy, you are in, and you got to go through the whole procedure. So the first question the commentaries ask is, well, if that's the case, that's the order that it comes in. The order that it happens is the house, the clothing, and the body. So why does the Torah describe it in terms of getting it on the body, getting it on the wall, on the clothing, and then getting it on the house? Comes in if it comes in the opposite direction. Good question, right? What do you say?
You might not notice it, or you might ignore it if it's the first two stages, but the third one you can't ignore.
So why does the Torah, fine, so why doesn't the Torah write it in the order that it comes? The Torah says on the body, on the clothing, and on the house. But the Gemara says, first it goes to the house, then it goes to the clothing, then it goes to the body. If you've ignored it, it goes to the clothing. If you've ignored it, because we might very well ignore it. So we ignore the message. So then why does it go in the opposite order? What do you say, Noah?
I was going to say because maybe he's trying to teach that it comes from outside influences. Like the Torah says they're for doing lashon hara. So
Probably, you're probably right. It actually says lashon hara. Lashon hara, you could get it straight to the body. Lashon hara is so bad you could go straight to the body. Okay, but you're right. That's why it comes from the out. That's why it comes with a lower degree to the higher, but with less extreme to more extreme. The question is, so why doesn't the Torah write it in that order? Why does the Torah write it the most extreme, lesser extreme, lesser extreme? That's not the order that it happens. Why does the Torah write there? So one of the commentaries points out that God is a merciful Father. And the Torah is talking to us the way a father often talks to his son. We even say, Kirachim of albanim, as a father has mercy on his son, please have mercy on us, Hashem. So my understanding of that statement is, father comes home at the end of the day, especially with boys in the house, and the mother who's been with the kids all day, she looks like, you ever hear Custer's Last Stand? The famous Custer who got slaughtered with his men by the Indians. She looks like Custer's Last Stand. Custer's Last Stand where she's Custer. And the father comes into the house and the mother's just, what he did. And if I don't feel like disciplining the kid, I don't feel like, you have a certain way, you cut him a little slack. So the Torah says, what Hashem is saying to you? Hashem is saying to you, you know what you deserve? You deserve tzaras on your body. And if not that, then you deserve tzaras on your clothing. But I'm going to have mercy on you. I'll only put it on your house. That's often how it says, what I really should do is I should ground you for 6 months. And if not 6 months, 3 months, but I'll only ground you for 2 weeks. Right? I just want you to know how severe the sin is, but then I'll cut you a little slack. That's what the Torah is telling you over here. So the Torah is telling you that you should realize you should realize that it's a very hard thing for a father, by the way, because a father, much of the discipline in the home has to do with your own mood, which is unfair. It's a very, very big challenge as a father. I would say more kids in the world get spanked on a day that the father had his salary cut than on a day that the father got a pay raise. Because when you get a pay raise, you're in a good mood. When you have your salary cut, you're in a bad mood. So the same thing. So the kid's sitting at the table, and he glues his sister to the wall. So on some days you get upset. There are other days like, well, that's my boy. Depending on what happened at the office, that depends how proud you are. I remember when my wife was expecting. The hardest thing for women is that not only they have to raise children and they are pregnant, but the hardest thing is when you're pregnant and you have to raise children. So I just remember when my son was about 3 years old, my wife is about, she's about 8 months pregnant, and she's trying to catch him, to wash him up or put him in bed, do something. And the funniest thing is watching her waddle after him, and he's skipping down under a table. I'm supposed to be helping her, but I'm sitting there laughing, and I'm thinking to myself, go, 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 as he's running away from her. So
Did your wife watch this?
No, I wouldn't let her. So what happens is when you discipline, you have to discipline objectively, not based on your mood. It's a very tricky thing. That's the idea. I will tell you a story about that, by the way. The other thing is there's an idea over here also that the Torah, the tzaras comes at one step at a time, so you should do a little soul searching. I heard a very interesting story. I think it was with Hidabrut, if I'm not mistaken. Hidabrut is the one that started this thing. There was a guy who became a Baal Tshuva, and he started giving classes for Hidabrut, and his mother was anti. So what the guy did is he told his mother, by the way, Mom, I just want you to know, I've got a position, I'm going to be doing a segment on television. Oh, television is already, what do you call it? Television. He didn't tell her what it was about. He just said, I'm doing a segment on television. Television is something everybody respects. So he said to her, I'm doing a segment on television. This is the time channel it's going to be on. He never even said what the thing is. Then he gets on there, and he starts, and she's very proud. There's my son, he's on TV, and he's giving a kiruv class, and he was makar of his mother by doing that without her even knowing it. There's another story. Obviously, we're stopped today, but there was another. I'll just tell you one last story. There was a lady in Israel, secular lady in Tel Aviv, and one day she had one thing that she did. There was one thing that she was traditional about. She checked. She came from a traditional home, and she knew that you're supposed to have a mezuzah on your front. She had one mezuzah on her front door. So, and she also knew you're supposed to get it checked periodically. So she goes over to her, calls a friend of hers. She says, Anat, where is there a sofer who could check my mezuzah? So she says, there's a from guy, take your mezuzah. So she brings in the mezuzah to the guy. The guy takes one. He says, this mezuzah is so puzzle. And I know what had happened. She had fallen off a ladder, and her husband had been in a traffic accident. Her daughter had cut herself with a knife, had a real bad cut. It all happened in a week. And she decided she do this thing that when bad things are happening, you should check the mezuzah. So she goes and she checks the mezuzah. So the guy takes one look at the mezuzah and says, "You got the mezuzah as puzzle as can be." So she goes, "Well, can you tell me how long you think it's been puzzled for?" He goes, "Well, based on the discoloration, probably about, I would guess about 4 or 5 years." She goes, 4 or 5 years? And she goes, "Oh, no wonder." He goes, "Yeah, what do I?" She says, about 4 or 5 years ago, our son, against all of our wishes, he became a Baal Tshuva. Now I realize why. We didn't have any protection in the home, so he became a Baal Tshuva.